Welcome to ALP Corner, Family Law in the heart of Houston.
Welcome back to ALP Corner, Family Law in the heart of Houston, with attorney Allecia Pottinger, CEO of ALP Law Firm. With more than 25 years of experience guiding Texans through complex divorce and custody matters, Allecia combines clear legal insight with the steady perspective clients need most. I'm Kevin Rosenquist, and today Allecia is going to explain what happens to your company during a divorce. Allecia, welcome back.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good and fabulous as well.
Good and fabulous. I love it. I love it. Well, this is an interesting topic because obviously businesses is a factor that becomes a part of a divorce if a relationship gets to that point. You work with a lot of professionals. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs. When business owners come to you, what's their biggest concern about divorce and ownership?
Whether or not they're going to lose the value in the company, will this divorce affect the goodwill, the value, the assets that I have accumulated in the business. And so most of the time they are pleasantly surprised that it may not affect their business depending on the type of entity that they started off with.
Okay, so it depends on the LLC versus C corp versus all the other stuff, right?
Exactly. If you're in it and you were a sole proprietor, good luck. You everything that is accumulated during that time is fair game. It's community. Period. In the discussion, the case is closed. So.
We talked a lot about community property in our last one about the Jeff Bezos divorce. How does Texas decide whether a business is community or separate property?
See, that is the thing. The business itself, we an LLC, a corporation, and also a partnership is the interest in those companies that is divided. It's not the company itself, unless we're talking sole proprietorship, then different story. So if the business was started after the marriage, then and it's an LLC, then the interest that has the member has accumulated in that LLC is divided as a community asset. Same with the partnership. That partnership interest is divided as a community um, asset. And lastly, even a corporation, the corporations, the stockholders, those stocks are considered, which is the interest in the corporation. Those stocks are divided as community assets.
Okay. Okay, so if a spouse started their company before the marriage, but the business grew afterward, the increase in
Ooh.
value, does that become marital property or community property?
The increase in value could definitely become a a community asset. Yes, especially if community funds were used to increase that business uh, level from going from here to here, that growth. So yes, it does affect it, and it depends on how the interest was accumulated. So let's say that you owned a third before the marriage of a LLC, third or a partnership. If during the marriage you take on another third, that third is going to be considered community property
Hmm.
that you just acquired. But that other third is going to be considered separate property.
Okay.
That's why we were talking about in that last episode, we were talking about tracing. And that's why tracing is so important because things can get commingled and things it's not as clear cut as we would like them to be.
Hmm. What about investors? I know we talked about partners, but if a business has investors, does that change the outcome of these cases?
No, investors are investors. Remember, we they still maintain their interest in the company, because remember, the entity is a living, breathing person. Is how we refer to a corporation or organization. It's a living and breathing entity, and so that entity can't get divided up. It is interest in it is divided up, and
Right.
so investors are protected, and also people who, silent partners, that type of thing, are still equally are protected in some, depending on the mechanism in which an entity that they choose.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And when a business is considered community property, what options does the owner have? For example, to sell, buy out, offset with other assets. What options are there?
At that particular time, it's just the interest. So, one good thing about it, let's say that the business acquired another business. That business becomes now the business of the organization. It's not the business of the person who acquired it, so to speak. So only the interest is divisible.
Okay.
See? And so you would need someone to talk about what the value is in that acquisition, so to speak. Or a lot of times, what you will find is in this is in doctors, lawyers, accountants, that type of thing in that field. A lot of their businesses are don't have as much value in it as you would think,
Mm-hmm.
because it is subject to goodwill. So if the accountant, the lawyer, the doctor is gone, there's no business,
Mm-hmm.
period. And so there's no asset in order to divide up, and you have to be real careful in those particular situations and circumstances.
What does a business valuation actually involve? How does that work?
Ooh, okay. So in Texas, because there are certain rules such as goodwill cannot be divided, etc., the valuators will look at the business. They'll look at what is owned by the business, how many assets are there, what are the accounts receivable, what are the partners doing, how are they progressing, what does the marketing look like, what are their competitors doing. It's all about, the strategic wherewithal, the SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, and threats. All those things go into place in a business valuation, and then they come up. They run numbers. I'm not a numbers person. That's why I'm in law. But they
Me
run
neither.
numbers, and they come up with a value of the company based on all those different factors.
Okay. How long of a process is a business valuation? Depends on the size of the company, I'd imagine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I think there's a perception that, the spouse will automatically get half of the company, but as we've been talking about, that's certainly not true. Where does
No.
that misconception come from, you think?
Because most people think that they own the company, and that's the misnomer. you
Okay.
you only own an interest in the company. You can't own an organism, you
Organization.
can't own an individual, so to speak. You can only have an interest in it, and that's where a lot of people think, that the business is going to go under, and half of it is going away, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you hear about community property and stuff like that and how things work after a divorce, I guess it could make sense that that misconception can get pushed out there. Do you find a lot of times that people come into your office with that very concern?
Yes,
Really?
absolutely. And here's the thing, that in per statute, that goodwill that I was talking about, the name recognition, all those particular things are not divisible.
Hmm.
And so what are you going to get if you remove that person from the business? What are you going to get is what you have to look at. And a lot of times, in with a lot of the professionals that I deal with, their business is solely on that goodwill mechanism, that they are measured. Their business is measured by that goodwill. So the business interest is not that much once you remove that person out, and the business evaluator would make a determination how much value is in the business based on that as well being a
Hmm.
factor.
Planning through things like prenups and postnups, which we talked about last episode, partnership agreements,
Mhm.
that can protect a business before a divorce is even on the table, correct?
Correct.
How do
Absolutely.
those, can you kind of describe the three prenups, postnups, and partnership agreements and how that affects this?
Well, in the for example, if we'll go back to the last episode, I was really talking about the postnuptial agreements.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the postnuptial agreement can say you are going to, like with Jeff Bezos, he owns 100% of the authority, or the voting rights, etc., of the company. His ex-wife only got like 25% of their community interest, of her community interest in that stock. And that community interest just happened to be $38.3 billion. And so, yeah, with a B, right? Yeah, I know. And so you can divide up your interest, you can divide up your stock and say, okay, I'm gonna take 25 stock, you're gonna take 25 stock. Let's see what the company does. You might buy more stock. The other party may buy more stock. It just depends. And based on, at that point, it makes it a lot easier to come up with a fair market value for the company, because that company is publicly traded, and that stock is there's a known value for that stock because it's, you know um, publicly traded.
It's out there.
So,
Yeah. It's out there in the world.
hmm
Hmm.
hmm as opposed to something that is not publicly traded, then that's when we get back into the business evaluators coming up and trying to come up with a value for the business because it's not publicly traded.
And most businesses aren't dealing, in these situations, aren't dealing in tens of billions of dollars as a given rule. I think for divorces and whatnot.
Correct.
Are these, is everything we're talking about here applicable to all business sizes going on down?
Correct. Yes,
Are, are
because the
there,
entity doesn't change based on the size, or
okay.
your interest doesn't change based on the size. Meaning, um, I don't know how many stocks were put out in Jeff Bezos in Amazon, how many stock the board chose to put out there. But if you only have 100 shares in the company, that 100 shares is the 100 shares, and that's going to get divided.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter whether it's a huge company, smaller company, that interest will get divided.
What advice would you give to somebody who might be listening today, a business owner, and they're worried about how a divorce might affect their company? What steps or first steps should they take?
They should consult a lawyer or a business. They could even consult their business attorney, who incorporated them. Find out what type of entity, what type of interest do I have in the company, and what is my exposure, so to speak, if I end up getting a divorce. most of the time they wait until they get a divorce to find out what's going on.
Right.
But it is good to find out before, as you're going through, what to do and what not to do, because if it turns out that this individual puts in so much work, so much time, so much toil, so much talent into this business, then the community can come around and ask for reimbursement later on because of all the emphasis that the spouse put in the business and in
Okay.
order to equalize things.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense as a good place to start. Are people generally? You said that not many people plan for this kind of stuff, which makes sense, right? No one plans for divorce. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, most
Hmm.
people don't plan for divorce, but is this something you're seeing more of with more? Are more people kind of realizing that this is important and it's not necessarily things like a prenup, a postnup, any sort of a plan in case of a divorce, that it's more about the money and not about the emotion of it?
Correct. Yes. And they even have some ways and means that and we talked about mediation, but also there's collaborative law where everything is on the table and you divide up your assets accordingly. And so there are mechanisms out there to help you through the process in the event you get yourself into a divorce. And a lot of times people get blindsided and not knowing that a divorce is coming.
Hmm.
They're there and the doorbell rings and here you've been served. So sometimes it's just best to just plan and ask questions in the event. What ifs are always good.
Yeah, not always the pleasant conversation, but the important ones for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, well, that's it for today's episode of ALP Corner, Family Law in the Heart of Houston. If you'd like to learn more about attorney Allecia Pottinger and her work at the ALP Law Firm, visit alplawfirm.com. You'll find resources to help you protect what you've built and move forward with confidence. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Leave us a review. We very much appreciate it. Allecia, I always love chatting with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.